Good morning, America.
And good morning to those who need a little more peace and a lot more Christ. My name's Drew.
And my name's Carson, and welcome back to the Peace in Christ podcast. Y'all, we
That
are
was beautiful.
so
That
excited.
was beautiful, y'all.
That was nice.
I'm ready now.
We are
cute.
so excited to have you guys on here. We've been anticipating this since we started, honestly. Like,
We talk about y'all in pretty much every single episode we filmed.
I think
we're here.
every,
Now we're here.
every episode.
Well, we've been looking forward to this. We just love what you guys are doing, and yeah, stoked to be a part of it today.
Heck yeah.
Will y'all just give us a short introduction about who you are?
Hollis?
Who is Ballas Hunt?
Who is Ballas Hunt is crazy. Hey everyone, my name is Hollis. I am a happy guy. You know,
This is true. This is true. Hollis is probably one of the happiest guys I know.
I'm graduated from BYU. I work at HXP with Talon. That's how we met these stellar, handsome boys. And my mom is from Thailand. It's one of the best things about me, to be honest. I feel like I served my mission there, taught Thai at the MTC there, do some general conference stuff with Thai, and it's a big blessing. But biggest thing, I feel like I am just one of the best compliments someone has given me is that they say I'm a kingdom builder, and that's all I want to be known as. And I think being a kingdom builder is a very one of the biggest compliments I've ever received, and it's something I want to be known by.
I gotta say amen on that. You are a kingdom builder.
Yeah, thank you.
100%.
That's a good compliment. I like that. All right, I'm Talon. I grew up in Philly, and that's important
That's important.
because that created my first loves. First one was Rocky. I loved Rocky. Such a good movie. Y'all know what I mean?
love
yeah.
Rocky 4 especially.
Rocky
You gotta
4,
love
yep.
it. You gotta love
Rocky
it.
4 is nice.
But also fell in love with the Eagles. It's part of my personality trait, loving the Eagles. They're looking good this year. And yeah, honestly, growing up, just loved sports. All sports, just loved them. That was all I thought about growing up. Ended up on a mission, was the best thing in the world in Argentina. Loved it with my whole heart. And that just, people say their mission changed them. And I'm like, no, my mission really changed me, like a lot. All my friends, when I came back from my mission, they're like, bro, what happened to you? Because I came to love Jesus so much. And I remember I came home from my mission. My dad's like, what do you want to do with your life now? And I'm like, I honestly don't care. Like, I live under a box and preach Jesus. Like, that's what I want to do with my life now. And I think that really sums up my greatest passion now is preaching Jesus. Got married a couple years ago to such a good lady, Dre Bay. We love her. And yeah, about to have a baby boy. I had to say that because it's so fresh.
They're gonna have a baby.
It's so fresh. So I had to
And
say
Talon
that.
will name his baby boy Hercules.
Guys, I'm trying so hard to convince Dre to let me name him Hercules. I don't know if it's going to
No
work, but we're
way.
trying. We're trying so
Carson's like,
hard.
are you serious?
Because you know my last name, right? It's Hercules Savage. It'd
That
be
is a
me.
man's
That's tough.
man.
That's tough.
So I don't know if we'll convince her, but we're working hard on it.
All right.
So a lot of what we want to talk about today is a life that inspires change. And you were just talking about how your mission did that for you. What are some ways that you feel like it really changed your life? Like, give us the how it did.
The how, first and foremost, who I wanted to be completely changed. I would say in high school, if you would have asked me, like, who are you? I would have been like, oh, I play sports, I play football, I love it. That's my passion. That's what I do. Like, I saw myself, I'm an athlete. That was my identity. When people talked to me, they asked about sports. They asked about football. They asked how it was going. That was so the focus of my life because that's what I loved, right? And I'll never forget, and this is actually perfect for this topic. I'll never forget this teacher that I had in the MTC when I was prepping to be a missionary. And this guy was the most studly stud I've ever met in my life. He had big pecs. He could bench a lot. I really respected that part about him. Really just like smart, competent, and more than anything, the dude was so influential. The way that he interacted with people and the way that he inspired people was so different. And what that man did for me is he redefined in my mind what a disciple of Christ is. And I realized that a disciple is actually the coolest thing in the world that you could be because I watched him interact with people in a way that changed them. And all of a sudden, just at the very beginning of my mission, my mind changed from I'm an athlete to, oh, I'm a disciple of Christ.
He shaped your wanting to be like him.
Oh, 100%. And it really did make me set on this path of I'm going to become somebody who makes things better. I'm going to become someone who, like Christ did, heals where I go, inspires where I go, just does good wherever I go. And then the whole mission was just trying to become that person, and honestly, still trying to become that person.
That's awesome. So that clearly had a big impact on your life. Hollis, could you say, the biggest ripple effect in your life? Like what individual?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, I think of less more people and more events that have happened in my life that created this huge ripple effect in my life. I feel like in high school, from the outside, Hollis, he big student government kid, big nerd, but also, he played his sport, has daily dose of sports. He played basketball, some volleyball. He did some swimming. He tried to be like well-rounded. And I think Hollis was well-liked in high school as well. But I feel like in high school, Hollis thrived off of people's opinion of him. Like if people liked him, he was doing really good in life. But if people didn't like him, he was taking it.
It's hard not to think that way.
Oh, yeah. Like Hollis was a natural born people pleaser. And if like some people were doing some stuff and they thought it was good, I think he would follow that. And it was just easy to be influenced. And I don't think that just came from Hollis was just born that way, but sometimes like going home, Hollis felt like really insecure as well. I feel like high school was one of the best times of my life, also one of the most lonely times of my life. And I feel like when you look at someone, you look at Talon, you look at you two, you look at a lot of really cool people doing a really cool thing in the world, I feel like I see a pattern where the thing we want to change in the world is something we've had to really overcome. Some pain we've gone through, or some unknown that we've had to work through, or something that's been hard for us that we've come out the other side. And when we do that, we can't help but want to change that in the world. And I think those events cause ripple effects in our life. And I feel like in high school, it was because Hollis came from like a more rough background with like parents fighting and sometimes feeling lonely back home. You wanted to combat that and make sure no one ever felt that. And I feel like that's why it's so cool being with you two, seeing what you two are doing. It's cool to see people want to instill a change in the world based off previous experiences that they felt the total opposite.
Absolutely. I love that.
Was there a specific person, you're talking about how you were insecure, you felt insecure, kind of being in high school. Was there a specific person that helped you overcome that? Or was that kind of your own personal journey?
I think it was the unconditional love shown me by my mom. Talon knows I talk about my mom all
the sweetest lady,
the time.
yeah.
She is the sweetest lady. And I feel like that comes from not only my mom, but also friends. Friends were huge for me, and I would dare say friends saved me in high school. Like my positive peer group that I had in high school was everything, because I chose to be with people that lifted me, that helped me, and provided spiritual comfort for me almost when I felt like I couldn't provide it for myself. And I feel like those people you surround yourselves with can really cause these ripple effects down the road that you have no idea could happen because of the people you choose to spend your time with. So I think friends, man, friends in high school are huge. And you see people with good friends, bad friends, and how that influences what they do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Well, and just thinking about this, I could talk about this one guy that really affected my life, but I really believe that my life has been filled with what I like to call game changers. And it's so easy to see in sports. I remember this kid is one of my best friends I played football with, and he's the most incredible receiver I've ever played with, and he absolutely changed games. When he was in the game, you knew he was in the game because it was going to be different. And people couldn't guard him. He was scoring like crazy. Like, he was such a stud. And I think there's people like that in life that are game changers. They change things around them. I think Hollis is talking about his mom being like that. But when I look back in my life, I can see so many people that in different ways and in different instances, I'm like, oh, they change things for me. And I think that's who God wants us to be. I think God really doesn't want us to just be a bench warmer. I think he really doesn't want us to just be someone that goes in the game and has no effect. I think he wants us to become the kind of people that can change things. And if we're willing to let him, he can shape us, and he can mold us, and he can help us become those kinds of people.
I'll tell you what, Talon, you may not see it now, but you're a game changer. Seriously, for a lot of kids.
Appreciate
a lot
that,
of people.
brother. Appreciate
No,
it.
but here's the thing: is I feel like when the game's on the line or it's close like that, and when those game changers go into the game, like they know that they're going to be able to perform. But there's some times where I feel like in my life, I'm scared, where I'll go in and, I was a bench warmer or something like that, or I'm down the road in the depth chart. And when I get put into that game, like I'm nervous and, I might think like, oh, what if I fail? Or what if, this is my only chance? So I just feel like the biggest part of that is overcoming that fear and being like, well, God will reward us for our efforts rather than our outcomes. We might not win that game.
Well, and I think that fear, we have so much doubt about our capability.
Yeah.
And if I were Satan, the biggest thing that I would want to do is I would want to get people to think less of themselves. I would want to get people to think that they can't make that much of an impact, that they're not going to do much good, right? That they're not good enough, they're not that enough. You know what I mean? And if he can get you to think that, you're not going to have the confidence to step into that game and to really do something impactful. And so I think that's why so much of what he does is attacking our identity and how we feel about ourselves and how we see ourselves, where Christ is saying, I can do really great things with really simple people. If you'll let me work with you, if you'll let me train you and coach you and mold you, I can turn you into something really, really special.
Yeah, we're talking about the ripple effect. So many times people just need the opportunity and the chance to be that ripple effect. Like we're spreading the gospel, teaching other people the gospel. When they receive the gospel, who knows what they'll be able to share the gospel to. Once they convert themselves to God, how many people can they reach? Nobody knows. But if we don't take that chance to share with them, they won't have the chance to share with everybody else. My grandpa's a convert, and now our whole family was born in the gospel specifically because he decided to read the Book of Mormon.
I got a great scripture that goes perfectly with that. It's D&C 64:33. It says, "Be not in well-doing, for ye are laying the foundation of a great work." So like what you're saying, trust that your effort, it might seem small, but it's part of a greater divine plan. It's like for your grandpa, it started this huge ripple effect. It's this divine plan. It's so much more than we can see.
I mean, me and you were talking about in the car right here. We look way back to Abinadi. He's sitting on the pole.
It's the best ripple effect example I think there is.
Good.
100%. And Alma just sees him and he decides, you know what, I'm going to take what he's done and I'm going to magnify it. And then his son has a big stumble in the road. He's like a destroyer.
He has a ripple effect negatively.
Sadly, it was negative to begin with, but then God put an angel in his place, and then he ended up becoming one of the greatest prophets of all times. And so we're going to have these times in our lives where we're like go through struggles, but God's going to put things in our path. They're not always going to be angels, obviously, but that'll shift us back to where we need to be. And as long as we accept those, then we're able to get back on that path and become incredible like he wants us to be.
Well, and the reason I love this Abinadi example so much is Abinadi decided, I'm going to do what God wants me to. I'm going to be his messenger. I'm going to try to be a game changer is basically what he said. And he gave his whole heart to try to change things, to try to make people's lives better. And what's crazy is if you look at the end of his life, it's like, oh, well, he was burned at the stake. He failed. It did not work for Abinadi. He gave everything, and it did not work. And I think that's the other thing Satan wants to do is tell us that our efforts don't matter, that they're wasted, that they didn't work. But the coolest thing about Abinadi is even though he didn't see it, the effect that he had was so big just because he changed the life of Alma. And then so much came from that. And I just think if we had a way to see the effect from all the good that we've tried to do, I think it would completely transform our lives. I think we would be so much more motivated to do good because we would realize, oh, I didn't know talking to that person at the store was everything that they needed. Because all you saw was that interaction, but what you didn't see is later that day how much they needed that.
Yeah, on the lock screen of my phone, I have in bold letters, "You don't know," for many specific reasons. And one of them being, you have no clue the impact your small decision is going to make in other people's life and in your life later down the road. You don't know what other people are going through. You don't know what God has in store for you. All of those deeply significant things that have impacts on our lives. And so it's a good reminder when I look at my phone every time, like, you don't know.
What I think is interesting too, Carson, you brought this up a little bit ago, but some of us just don't feel like we're capable of making that impact. Some of us are just waiting and waiting and waiting for an opportunity and don't feel like right now we're capable of making that influence or having that difference in someone's life. And honestly, it reminds me of a moment in my life where Talon actually was a game changer for me. But we were on the train one day, just going home from work one day, and we were talking about making like big decisions in our life. And sometimes while we're waiting for something, we seem to get paralyzed. You know, when there's something about to happen, it's easy to feel paralyzed, feel like you're not enough, and feel like the unknown can be so scary. And we came across this quote that I really love. It's one of Tal and I's
Churchill
favorite.
one?
Oh, it is the Churchill one.
I love this
I need to
quote.
read this for you guys because we can honestly unpack this a lot. It's so good. But I was going to call him Elder Churchill for 5 seconds. I was like, our boy Elder Churchill. I've called him some other things, actually. But he says, to each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And I love that because we have these moments in our lives where God is literally tapping us on the shoulder and saying, Drew, Carson, this person needs you, and I've prepared both of you for this moment right now so I can use you as a vessel to change this person's life. And how sad would it be if you were unprepared? Or how sad would it be if you were not living your best life? Or you didn't even get that prompting in the first place because you knew you were in a situation you shouldn't have been in.
Yeah, President Nelson tells us over and over and over again, specifically right now, that Jesus Christ is coming. And it goes right back to what you're saying. When he comes, how sad of a day it is going to be if we're not prepared for him to come. Like if he comes tomorrow, which he very well could, we have no clue. I don't feel prepared. I would just say that honestly. If he came tomorrow, I don't feel prepared to meet him. And so we have to live our lives in a way that inspires the change we're talking about to be prepared for when he comes.
Okay, this got me thinking. Isn't that quote so good though?
That's a good quote.
And you sharing that quote, it got me thinking of and we're talking about my football team, so it got me thinking about my team. We were terrible. We won 2 games my senior year. We were so bad. And the reason why is I so vividly remember our season ended the year before, right? And November comes, and I remember it was like, dang, we got to start prepping. We got to start training for next year. And none of the other kids on my team were training. None of them. And then December went by, and January went by, and February. And I'm still training. None of the other guys are there. I'm like, what is going on? And we go all the way through. Nobody shows up until the required practices in June, right? And then the season comes, and we did absolutely terrible. Our moment was when the games were coming, right? That was our time to perform. That was our time to shine. Those games, though, were not won in August or in September. Those games would have been won in January or February or March. Those games are won long before the games actually happen. And it's got me thinking so much about this spiritually, because if you want to win in August, you got to be training like crazy in January. And if you want to really let God use you to make a difference, you got to be doing the little things. And sometimes working out in January for the season that's months away, it's really hard to be motivated.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's really hard to do those little things. But I think if you can look ahead and say, I'm going to be ready for that moment that God taps on my shoulder. And every single day, I'm going to get a little bit closer to him. And I'm going to let him shape me a little bit more. And I'm going to let him teach me and change me and help me become more of a person that can impact. You're putting yourself in a position that when that opportunity does come, you're ready. And it's like, oh, he's taught me the things that I need to know for this.
That's specifically why the Book of Mormon and our prophets tell us so many times to remember, because we forget in our hour of need. And if we just remember, we'd have the spiritual promptings, we'd have the motivation to keep going and to do those small things.
Isn't it crazy how much they tell us to remember? It's in our sacrament prayers every week. It's on almost every page of scripture, I feel like, to remember. Because I don't know about you, I forget so easily.
Oh, me too.
I forget so much. I literally forgot my car keys at the gym today. I got to my car, I was like, what the freak?
That's terrible.
It's so bad. But it's so easy to forget. And we wonder why in General Conference sometimes they say the same things over and over again. It's because we still haven't learned. You know, and how many times does God have to tell us to do one certain thing because we still haven't learned? And going back to what we've been saying, I feel like when those moments come, very rarely does just God hand us something on a silver plate and platter saying, hey, good job, I love you. It's because you've already put in the work in to become closer to him and become someone you were born to be. And it's so interesting how that works in our lives and how divine timing, how divine design works in our lives, because very rarely things just happen. It's because of those years and months of hard work. It's because of those days of scripture study. It's because of you being the best person you could that these things happen.
I love, and I think in everybody's patriarchal blessings, it says all of these gifts are ready for you if you will like come unto them and receive them. And I love that it says that, because God doesn't just hand us these gifts freely. We have to work for them to receive them, but they're major gifts in our lives that we can take in and love and use them for good for ourselves and for others. But we can't get them if we don't put in that work beforehand, like both of you were talking about.
But I think something important to notice with that too is that I think you're so right. He doesn't just give it to us, but he's dying to give it to us. He wants to so bad. Yeah. And I've seen that. I've had the opportunity now to coach teams and to train players, and there's certain kids that I'm just like, man, you really could become something special. Like you really could become something great. And from the coach perspective, it's like, I wish they would give me the opportunity. I wish they would start working with me. I wish they'd be willing to change and to grow. Because I just think that's the way that God feels about each of us. He's like, I know what you can be, and I'm just waiting for you to work with me to become that.
Yeah, it's like when we pay our tithing, we give up 10%, and we can look at it like we're giving up that and we're like sacrificing that, but really God's sacrificing the other 90%. Like he's meeting us way down here, and we're just coming up just a little bit. But it's like when we give that 10%, the 90% that we're being able, but again, it's like you said, like we have to put forth that effort. We have to give up that little sacrifice that seems big to us, but it's so minuscule in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, what y'all are talking about is just getting me going on one of my favorite things in the world. You guys are going to know this about me as well. Talon already does. But my favorite word in the English dictionary is co-create. All right? Is that
Nobody loves that word.
Nobody loves
Hollis
it more
does.
than me, all right? And let me tell you a little background to it. I'm in this major, or I graduated from this major at BYU called Experience Design. And the number one thing they tell you is the best experiences you'll have in your life are the ones that are co-created. And co-creation means not only is a business creating an experience for you, but the consumer, the customer is creating the experience with the business, so they're co-creating it together, and those are the best experiences because both people have an equal part in creating the experience. And it makes sense. You go to like Disneyland, or you have these, like for example, I don't know if you guys know what Cotopaxi is. Those HX backpacks, you know?
Those.
So good. They have these
Those bags
adventure
are the best.
festivals, you know, where it's like, hey, we're going to come to your state, and here's a list of 100 things to do, and whoever completes all of them first wins. And they're giving you this experience, but you are doing that with them. And those are like ingrained in your mind because you did something. And I can't help but think that's how we should live our life with God too. We can't live our life with God of him just giving us everything, even though he's dying to. We have a part in creating our life too. And when we learn that magic of co-creating our life with God, he wants to help us. Carson's dad actually said this fire quote when we were all in Texas. He said, learning to create is learning to be like God. And there is nothing in this life we can do that's more godlike than creating, because as we are God's greatest creation, there's no coincidence when you're creating something, whether it's like a business, a podcast, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're creating a project, you feel so good. There's like this energy, there's this divine energy there, is because that is godlike. Just like how God created the earth and he created us, he wants us to create our life with him. And when we learn that, I feel like we figure out the magic ingredients to life. And that's creating with him. And I think miracles happen because of that.
That's so sick.
You're honored. You've heard Hollis
Yeah,
rant on
that's
co-creation
awesome.
now. You've officially heard it.
That is awesome. It goes back to your analogy about the sports teams too, right? Would you rather win the Super Bowl being on the sideline all season, or would you rather be like on that field, right? When you're holding up that trophy,
I want to be in the game.
yeah, you want to be one of those star players. You want to be one of those game changers. And so, like, we know it says in the scriptures that God is going to like overcome Satan. Like he is going to win the war. We already know the outcome. So we already know we're going to win the Super Bowl. So knowing that, do you want to put in the work and be one of those players that everyone's like, that guy helped us win? Or are you going to be like just another one of the guys on the side? Because a football team is a lot of players, right? There's a lot of people on the roster. Do you want to be an impact player, or do you want to be someone on the sideline?
There's this verse that I'm obsessed with. I feel like most of the time reading the scriptures growing up, I did it because I was supposed to. I knew that I was supposed to, and that was my why. And if you read the scriptures because you're supposed to, then you're not really going to get much out of it. But there's this time that I read them because I wanted to find something. And I wanted to really learn something. And I found this verse in 2 Nephi 9 that talks about us standing before God. And it talks about how when we stand before God, we'll have a perfect knowledge for either good or bad. We'll have a perfect knowledge of our wickedness, or we'll have a perfect knowledge of our righteousness and of the good that we've done. And I immediately, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn this whole episode into sports stuff, but it's just the way my mind thinks. I immediately started thinking of film day, the day after game. And it's either one of the best days or it's one of the worst days. Yeah. And I've had film days that your coach is tearing you apart of, what happened here? Where were you here? Like, you missed this? What's going on here? And I don't think it'll be God doing that, but I think it'll be our conscience doing that if we're not living right. But I've also had film days where there's a play that coach will show again and again. I'm like, check this out, boys. Look at how good this was. Check this out. And I had this moment reading the scriptures that the day I stand before God, I want that to be a beautiful day. I want that to be a day that I could say, I know I wasn't perfect. And I know I made a ton of mistakes, but man, I gave you my heart. Like I gave my best to help your kids. And I don't think there's anything that God would be more proud of than seeing a kid that just says, I did everything to help.
That's
your
what
kids.
any coach or any God would ever want. That's what God always wants. He just wants you to give your full, and he's going to meet you with the rest.
Yeah.
So y'all both having already gone on missions, what's a piece of advice that you would give to the younger generation that want to share the gospel, but they don't know exactly the best way to do it?
Oh, I feel like there's so much we could talk about on this topic, but one quote comes straight to mind on what you can do now, or if you feel scared to share the gospel, want to be an everyday missionary. It's preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. Like, the gospel is meant to be shared, but one of the best ways you can share the gospel is being an example and being a light. Like, I love the scripture that we shouldn't hide our light, because my thing is, I feel like too many of us are hiding our light. So much of us are so full of potential and goodness and light, and we're just so scared to share it because we feel like we're not enough. Our self-esteem is not there. We don't have the confidence, and we're just internally struggling. But the best way to combat that is to share that light. And more than anything, people will see that. And sometimes it's hard to say stuff. I think it's so hard to sometimes speak your mind, confront things in your life. But if you are being a light and doing what you can, that can move mountains in your life. And start with your area of influence. I think that's my second piece of advice. So much of the time we want to go do these big things in the world, which is a great ambition. But start with your family, start with your friends, start with the people closest to you. And you have no idea how can that transform your life.
That's so good. That's so good. I actually have two thoughts. I'll say one, we can talk about it, and then I'll say the second one. But the first one's kind of like what you said. There's 4 separate times in the New Testament that it talks about Christ, and it says he moved with compassion. And those words have hit me so much because if you really start paying attention, I think in every single given day, you will feel compassion. And what I mean is you'll be walking down the hallway at school and you'll see someone that looks down and you'll feel compassion of, oh, that's too bad, Or you'll see someone sitting by themselves and you'll feel compassion of like, oh man, someone should do something, Or you'll see your mom look stressed. Every single day, I think people, if you're paying attention, you'll feel compassion. But what I love about the way that it describes Christ in the New Testament is that it says he moved with compassion. He felt that feeling of, oh man, someone should help him, someone should do something. But then he actually moved with it. And so many of the stories of Christ impacting lives, he did preach great sermons. And there are great verses about that, right? But so many times the stories of Christ are him walking down the street and feeling compassion and moving with compassion. And I think when I think of game changers, I think of people that walk down a hallway and are looking out. They're looking at the people around them and they're thinking, who needs love? Who needs lifting? Who needs encouragement? And when you do that, you're going to see people, you're going to feel compassion, and then you get to decide, am I going to move with compassion? You guys know what I mean with that?
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah, yeah,
sense?
I know exactly what you mean. Something I think that's helped me in the times that I've felt the most compassion is asking God for it. Like in my prayers in the mornings, I like to ask him, like, please let me see through your eyes the compassion and love that you see your children with. And it kind of helps me open my eyes and see the people around me.
That's so cool. That's such a cool thing to pray for. And I really think that like when I think of being a good disciple, it's not going and preaching, it's going to the store that you always go to or the gas station, the lady that you always see, and actually connecting to that lady, actually seeing her in that moment, actually seeing if there's a way you can add value. And what I've realized is the more you genuinely connect to people, the more the gospel just naturally comes up. The more you get to know people, the more you hear their stories, the more you can start seeing, oh, there's something that really helps me when I'm in situations like that. Can I share it with you? And it becomes so natural when you're really connected to people.
This is reminding me of another thing. This is real talk as well. I feel like in high school, it was so easy to compare myself. Like, it's hard to be a missionary because other people speak the language better than me. Other people know the scriptures more than me. Other people are better people persons than me, right? And you compare yourself in all of these things. But in high school, I heard this quote and I love it with all my heart, and I hope you guys remember it. But sucking at something is the first step of being kind of good at something.
Oh, that's
all right.
good.
And it's so good because since then, I have loved wanting to be the worst in the room at something. I've loved being the dumbest in the room at something because that means I'm surrounding myself with people that can help elevate me. And I don't view it as a bad thing. I view it as a growth opportunity. I feel like sometimes we're so scared of those moments or shy away from those places to be around those people because we're the worst. But what if we continue to do that the rest of our lives, and how much that would help and elevate us? And knowing that because we're bad at something, we can only get better. Like when I started learning pickleball, I was so bad.
He's still bad, John.
Okay.
He's still bad.
I'm going to tell you guys about this time me and Talon played pickleball, and me and my date beat him in his date. And you know what Talon did?
Oh, that didn't happen.
He was so mad.
His date was insane. His date was Serena Williams. I'm not kidding. She was insane.
Talon ran like a mile because he was so mad. Anyways.
On the date?
Listen, when I'm mad, I start running laps.
Okay.
It wasn't a mile, but I did start running. That's true.
When I started learning pickleball, I started with the people that were so good that I got wrecked every single time. The same thing with spike ball, same thing with basketball. But what I noticed is I kept getting better because I pushed myself with people that were better than me. And before you know it, you will be up there with them.
Something cool that you touched on is you said different people have different lights and different ways to share the gospel. A cool thing we did in seminary this year is when we gave devotionals in the morning, our teacher had us share what type of light we thought we were. And different people would say, well, I think I'm a candle. I think I'm a spotlight. I think I'm a bonfire for different reasons. And they all have various different impacts on the way you see light. And some help in some instances and some help in other instances. Sometimes you don't want the bonfire in your house, right? You just want the little candle. And I think if we can view ourselves as that same light, we're able to share the gospel in different ways. And people who think that they don't have anything to add value to people's lives, sometimes they have that small light that someone's needing that they can give to them. And that amplifies maybe their bonfire, that amplifies their bonfire.
That is the sickest example. I think I'm
cool.
obsessed with
I
that
like
because we
that.
just got a new lamp for our study room, and it's so little, but the vibe right now in our room at night is so good. Like I don't want a big spotlight. I don't want a crazy big bonfire there. I want that little candle. It's perfect for that moment, and I just love. I think if you look at the way that other people are impacting too much, you're going to try to start mirroring people, which there can be value in that, right? But I think if you let God be the one that teaches you about you, and let God be the one that teaches you about the impact that you can have, he'll help you step into what you were created to be, not what your buddy was created to be, or not what somebody else was. You know what I mean?
God gave us specific talents and resources because we needed to share them at certain times.
And the more you connect to him, the more you're going to tap in to those gifts, because you're going to impact in a different way. And it just makes sense. God's not going to have every person impact in the same way, or we'd have the same, people would all be doing the same things.
Yeah.
He wants different people to impact in different ways. So it's each person's individual's job to figure out the way that God wants them to contribute. And that really just comes with time. That comes spending time with God and listening to him and asking him questions and really letting him just tutor you about who you are.
And one way he can really tutor you, to kind of combine what we were talking about, sometimes we're so good at forgetting we need to remember, and us trying to be a light. One of the best ways God's tutor, or one of the best ways God's tutors us is through his kids, through people. And I feel like when people compliment you or say something good about you, write those things down, because I feel like this happens a lot with us. If someone will say we're good at something, first we'll shove it away and we'll deny it. How much of the time someone come up to you, Drew, you're so good at this. You're like, no. Yeah. And the first thing you do is deny it, right? We should embrace those things that people tell us, write them down, because those are spiritual gifts and talents that God has given you. Embrace those, remember them, write them down, because that's been a game changer for me growing up, especially in high school. I would write down things people say I was good at, and I would write those down, and before you know it, you get a huge list, and a lot of them are the same thing. And then when you get that list, ask yourself, how can I use these gifts to best serve God? And that's one cool way to remember those things, to know what gifts God has given you, and he's tutoring you this whole time. And it does take time, but believe those things that people tell you, keep a record of it, and ask God what you can do with them.
Oh, can I say something on the flip end of this? This actually is the second thing that I was thinking, that really one of the biggest ways that I think you can start making an impact now. There's a verse in Alma 31 that says, the word did have more powerful effect upon the minds of the people than the sword. Which, if you think about it, a sword or a weapon would have a pretty powerful effect to influence somebody. But what that verse is teaching is that the words have more of an effect on the mind than weapons. And I think one of the best things you can do to start becoming more of a game changer is to get super intentional about what you're doing with your words. And I think it's a really cool thing to self-evaluate. What's the overall effect of my words? How do my words affect my siblings? How do they affect my parents? How do they affect my friends? And the reason that I say that is one of my best friends in high school, this kid changed my life, because I didn't have a lot of confidence in high school. Like I felt confident in sports, but not in anything else. Like if it was outside of that, I didn't feel too confident. This kid, day after day, used his words to build me up and to help me believe in myself and to see the good in myself. And I will forever be grateful for him because of the way that he used his words. There's not enough people doing that.
And that's the kind of person we all can be. It doesn't require any certain
You can decide
skill.
to do that right now, to be intentional about your words.
And it changes people's life. It changed your life. If everybody did that, everybody's lives would be changed, right? We don't need some special talent that we've received or gained. You just be kind.
And really, like, where it can start is you start your day and you say, God, let me speak the words that people need to hear. And all day long, you pay attention to people, you look at people, you listen to people, and God's going to put words in your mind. And if you start focusing, I'm going to use my words to build and to uplift, he's going to fill you with those words, and you're going to start having a ripple effect. And there's things that friend told me that I still remember, and that's a ripple effect. And he doesn't know that. And there are things that you will start saying to people that you're going to go on with your day, and you're not even going to think about it, but they will hold on to those words for the rest of their life. And that will have a ripple effect.
Good or bad.
And it honestly can be good or bad. And I think way too often, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, I think in high school, I think for the sake of being funny or for the sake of, you know what I mean? Like we tear people down with our words, or we're negative with our words. And I'm like, words are powerful. Words matter. And you can become a game changer if you say, I'm not using my words the way that the typical high school kid does. I'm going to use my words to lift.
Isn't it crazy how words can just stick with you? Like, you'll always remember what your second grade teacher told you on that one day, and it just sticks with you.
I always remember in 7th grade, this
now.
kid told me I look like Voldemort with a nose, bro. It's because I had a buzz, just like now. He told me I look like, I'll never forget that.
Anyways, I love what Talon said. And I think both of us could say there is no better feeling than when you're being used as a vessel of God in his work. There is no better feeling. And it says it when you want to serve a mission and you go to the MTC, you're handed this book called Preach My Gospel. You're given your missionary purpose. And right in that first chapter of that book, it tells you, if you are a successful missionary, it's not how many baptisms you have. It's not how many people you teach. It's not how much weight you lose. It's not how ripped you get. It's not any of those things. What it is if you can feel the Spirit testify through you that Jesus Christ is real and lives and loves you. And that's a great measurement for us here. If you can feel God work through you, if you can feel him and you can have those promptings to talk to those people, to use your words effectively, to be a light, to be used as a vessel, to be used as someone who can cause a ripple effect, you are doing just great if you can feel the power of God in your life.
As we conclude this episode, I just want to bear my personal testimony of the power that each individual person has to change other people's lives. And how if we can just take Jesus and yoke him to us, that we will be able to make that small change in our everyday life to be the impact that others need.
I got this one Gandhi quote just right before we end.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I've been waiting for this the whole time.
You may never know what results come from your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no result. That right there, where it's like, right now,
That's
I'm going to
good.
start being intentional with my words. Right now, I'm going to start being a vessel.
Amen.
I love that.
Bro, that's
Hey.
money. That's money.